Leading up to the shutdown, where my career was in comedy, I was starting to travel a little bit, and I had just gotten past the La Jolla Comedy Store, did my first weekend there, was starting to get booked at American Comedy Company on all their weekends, and all these were paid spots that were actually decent. You would make $150 that night, and all your drinks and stuff would be paid, and all your food's paid, and it was starting to all my groceries this month were paid because I was telling jokes, or half of my rent because San Diego's expensive. Half my rent's paid this month because I was telling jokes, and I felt that there was all this momentum building. I look back at my schedule in January, and I did 25 shows that month, or 25 nights. Sometimes there'd be 2 or even 3 shows in a night. It was definitely a lot of fun, and if not for the shutdown, I would have taken that next step to Los Angeles, but now because of the shutdown, the next step is seeming like Texas.
But it's been great. I've been having a great Pandy. Have you guys felt weird? It's been weird, right? They're like, stay home and wear a mask. And I was like, I don't wanna.
So, obviously, like everyone, when COVID first breaks out, there's this period of time where no one's taking it very seriously, right? There still was a show, I think the week leading up to the lockdown, that was at the Beachcomber, and our buddy JP Woody is making a joke about,
selfishly, I want to get the virus first, and I want to spread it to all of you guys. So then I could die knowing that I killed on stage.
Me personally, I knew the hammer was coming down, but I didn't we squeezed probably two shows in, because we had sanitizer wipes, we had 2 different mics.
It was still kind of no one really knew how serious it was. The host was, wiping down the microphone with Clorox wipes, but it was more in a joking sense versus in sincerity.
And the crowd here is younger. They're all on Pacific Beach. We didn't know much about the pandemic yet, and they weren't scared of it yet, so the place was packed. I mean, it was, 200 people. And then I got the call the next week, and it was kind of not even just a call about the show stopping. It was the orders from Newsom saying the whole state was shutting down.
California is now under a statewide stay-at-home order, the first state to take that step.
We had been drinking, and we had some friends over, so Chris and I are at our apartment, and the lockdown order, we get news of it. And I remember my brain instantly went legal. I had just seen my friend who lived in Wuhan, China. He'd recorded a video on Facebook, and at the very end of it, he's like, well, maybe I'll miss the way things are and not seeing people. But in his eyes, you could see him no, help. And so I had that in my mind, and we're talking about the lockdown, and everyone's like, oh my God. And all I kept thinking was, okay, in order for this to actually work like it did in China, they're gonna have to put military personnel on the streets. We're gonna see martial law here. And as my brain's working on that, I looked across the room, and Chris, I'd known Chris long enough at that point, and I could just see his gears turning.
and I'm kind of getting in my head a little bit.
And I was like, what are you thinking, Chris?
I either got to get in the car right now and get the hell out of here and go to Utah, where my brother has a friend who said I can stay with him, or we got to get ready to batten down the hatches and lock in, because this is about to happen.
What? Because I'm an extrovert. I don't do well on my own. My little brother was gone for 2 weeks, and I felt depressive. So I'm thinking we're going in this full-blown lockdown, martial law, and my roommate's gonna leave me?
I remember I'm going around and I start kind of surveying the apartment. What do we got? What food do we have? What do we not have?
And at this point, I'm kind of like a lost puppy following him around. I'm like, where you going, Chris? And he's like, I've been looking at the fridge. And I'm like, all right, what's why are you doing that? And he's looking at the fridge. He's like, yeah, we'd be good. So I'm like, all right, well, at least he's calculating like what we need in food.
So I go, all right, we'll stay.
I woke up the next day pretty early. I woke up at like 6:30, and at this apartment we could see our driveway from my room. And I looked out, and Chris's car was gone at 6:30 in the morning. So I started having a real panic attack. So I'm like, oh my God, he wasn't checking the fridge to see if we had enough. It was if I had enough food. And so I started texting him. He's not replying. About an hour, I'm calling him, no answer. I finally, he picks up, and all he does is he's like, what? And I'm like, well, dude, where are you? You know, I saw the car's gone. It's pretty early. And he's like, I'm at the grocery store. I'm at Vons. It's crazy here.
He basically thought I left him, you know, and went to like Utah and just left this guy to like fend for himself. But meanwhile, I'm just preparing for like, you know, the end of days, and I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna survive out there on my own anyways. Like, I'd rather just die with a friend, and maybe we'll tell a couple jokes on the way out and eat some, you know, Campbell's chicken soup or something. But I go back, and, you know, we end up just kind of preparing for what would be an interesting couple months.
So COVID hits, and then nobody knows what's going on. It's, you know, state lockdowns. You don't know if you get the toilet paper craze. You don't know if you can leave your house. You can get groceries.
I was definitely scared. Like prior to that, I was hearing crazy things that weren't that crazy about people saying, you know, stockpile water, you gotta get your supplies good. I don't know.
I was still enrolled in college at UC San Diego, and at first it was awesome because it canceled like all of my finals. I didn't have to take any of them. I probably would have failed calculus, but because of that I got a B.
I'm living at my house with my roommate. My roommate works here and he's in the restaurant business, and we're still, during the lockdown, they still are letting people serve to-go food, and all the restaurants are still trying to figure it out.
Because at first everybody thought it was gonna like end in 2 weeks, but then like by day 10 I realized this is gonna be a lot longer than 2 weeks, because there's no way in 4 days we all step out of our houses and go, well, that was weird. Remember when they canceled the NBA? Remember when they told us that there's deadly viruses on our Amazon packages? That was kind of kooky, right?
Things at work were still crazy for me. I'd lost half my pay. I was supposed to be working half-time, but I still was working full-time.
I worked at a restaurant, so like I watched like people stop coming in as they like became afraid to go out.
So it was a weird adjustment, and then to kind of like just throw everything on there too, we had lost this outlet of comedy.
Not doing comedy during the shutdown, like when it all first started, it was tough, and I kind of thought, you know, okay, it's a hiatus, but it's, you know, how long could this last?
And I was just like going through like existential crises, like what's even going on anymore?
And what I found was that the only way to navigate through that was to, one, accept what was happening. And I kind of embraced this philosophy that my grandmother gave me, which is like, it is what it is. Whatever's going on in life that you can't control, you just gotta roll with it. And an even better way to roll with it is to laugh at it.
So I started just filming stupid sketches. I did stand-up in my living room, acted like it was a show. I mean, some of it's just terrible. Josh Nelson.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Small crowd, but we'll get through this.
I did comedy in 2020 where I'm out on a street trying to yell at the cars, like just stupid stuff. But I mean, just anything to try to get by.
I was doing a lot of TikTok stuff. I jumped on the TikTok train. I would do a lot of Zoom shows, a lot of online shows, and it just wasn't the same for me. Like, it was cool, but I like the crowd. I like to interact with the crowd. I like to hear the crowd laugh.
I started doing like writing more sketches and kind of going into different like spheres of the comedy world that also were of interest to me, just because, you know, what else are you gonna do? You can't go perform, so.
Chris and I started doing, you know, whatever we could. We started getting into TikTok a little bit, and we shot a Tiger King sketch. It was really just any outlet we could to kind of get that comedy out, because it had started to become a part of us, so I could feel it. We needed to do something, but it was all adjustments. It was all just kind of it was a weird time. It was a strange time.
One big vulnerability, I'd call it, of our existing apartment at the time is there's no outdoor space, right? And like, thank God we're across the street from like a park. We're able to get outside, get a little bit of fresh air, but boy, would it be better if we just had, you know, a yard or something. And then Phil, you know, decides that it's time for him to get a puppy. And we kind of land on, we need a yard. Like, we need more space. This dog is not going to survive well in our current situation. So we start looking around. And in short order, we find this apartment. To Phil's credit, he finds it on Craigslist. It posts that day. He's got a good feeling about it.
And then we walked into the backyard, and that had me sold. I just saw so much potential. I mean, I turned the corner, and that's where I saw the PB Backyard Comedy stage. I was like, this is it. I looked at Chris, and I was like, dude, that's a stage.
And I'm like, dude, that's a stage.